Hi, it's Sari from Coaching Healthy Minds. Okay, so as ever, I'm just doing a quick video on a Monday evening. And one of the things I was going to just mention tonight is about fears and phobias, because I've been asked about it recently on a message, and it is something that I get asked about quite a lot. And actually, I'd say that, quite a lot of people do have. I'm sorry about squinting, it's still really bright outside and it's beaming on me. A lot of people do have fears and phobias. And so I always tell people that the three principles and learning about the three principles also helps with that. And the reason it helps with that is because fears and phobias are still all thought created. Say hi if you're there so I can see who's there. So fears and phobias are all thought related. So any feeling is created through your thinking, and that includes fear. So what can happen again with a fear or a phobia, like sometimes people don't even know where that's come from, so they don't remember even ever having a time where so for example, someone was saying recently that their daughter has a fear of characters, people dressed up as characters, and she's a bit older, I think, she's not a small child, and kind of asked about that. And there might not be a specific incident that's happened where somebody dressed up has scared this person, and then they just keep holding on to that same experience. It can be from something that you don't know, but what happens is there'll be some kind of link. It's like with thinking, what we do is in terms of creating our experience through our thought, it's like we link and connect all the dots, okay? And so somehow that person has connected all the dots somewhere, and they've connected them wrongly, but they've connected the dots. So as soon as, it could even be a time when they were scared of something and their fight or flight system was in action, that there was somebody dressed as a character. So they're then attaching that fight or flight feeling to that event, and then it's kind of like keeps going like that. So it's like layers of thought. So let's just say something did happen where you were scared, and then you have a fear of it. So say I don't know what people have fears of. Flying is a huge one. Okay, so I've talked about that before. Now, I have a fear of flying. Not so much anymore, but I did have quite a bad fear of flying. But yet I'd never experienced a bad flight. So I created that fear or that phobia, I suppose, of flying through thinking. And every time I got on a flight, I would be thinking beforehand how awful it was going to be. Then I would be looking for reasons when I was on there why it was awful to validate that. So each time I would validate. And what happens then, your layers of thoughts get bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where people can then convince themselves they can't get on one. Okay? And that, again, is all created through thought. And actually, we could look back and go, well, what was it that triggered that, etc., etc. But, you don't always necessarily know exactly what it was. And actually you really need to, because you know that even if you did experience, so let's just say we were talking about a person that was scared of a character. Let's just say, I don't know, they met a dressed up character that when they were younger and they weren't very nice to them, or they fell over them, or something happened that gave them a fright. That happened then. That isn't happening every time they see someone in character. So actually, the reason they're experiencing that fear every time is because it's on autopilot trigger. They're making a connection. As I said before, they're connecting the dots wrongly, but they're connecting the dots. So it's as soon as they see someone in character, it triggers what I've talked about before, that lizard fight or flight brain. It triggers that part of the brain that's going, oh, we're not safe here. And then they think, oh, it's because of that character. And if I move away from that character, I'll be okay. And it's like a story that you make up in your head that you attach to something. And so whatever that fear or phobia is, you're attaching that to that thing. Because in some ways that, maybe makes more sense for you, that actually if I go away from that, this horrible feeling will go away. When actually you could create that same feeling really about anything. And you've created a lot of thoughts. So is anybody that's on here got any phobias or fears of anything? Anybody that's watching, be interested to see if anyone does have any fears or phobias. As I say, mine, the only one really is flying. But I'm okay with that now. Because of the three principles. Because I know it's all thought-based. And so when I'm on the flight and I'm feeling discomfort, I know that the discomfort is completely and utterly due to my thinking, nothing to do with the fact that the plane isn't safe. Heights, okay. Hi. Okay, so heights is another one. Okay, so there's a certain level of discomfort, isn't there, about being really high up? And that might be for anybody, and not even for somebody with fear of heights, because it's almost like your brain has to adjust to that height. So I'm not afraid of heights, but if I was up really high and look, it might take me a few seconds to just adjust my vision in a sense and ground myself, I suppose. Whereas if then, for whatever reason, it might be that you've been up on a height at some point and not been able to ground yourself, because what you've done is you've had that slight few seconds of discomfort that we might all have, that's quite normal, and you've latched onto it and thought, oh, it's because I'm up here, I'm not safe, I'm now scared of heights. And then once you develop that story that you're scared of heights, then even the thought of going up somewhere high will start that thinking. But actually, you're just as safe as the next person who isn't scared of heights up there, but it's just that your thinking is telling you that, you know, you are to be scared, and you're getting that fight or flight. So it's another habit. A fear is another habit. Although I can drive and have been for years, I have a terrible crippling fear of driving into places I don't know how to get to. It causes lots of anxiety. Okay, again, similar thing with the heights. Like, there's a certain level of discomfort naturally with going somewhere we haven't been before. We have to concentrate more. We have to maybe, you know, think, oh, where do I need to go? And we don't know what to expect at the other end because we've never been. So again, it's about a very natural level of discomfort that anybody would have. But what you then do is you attach so much more to that, because your thinking gets bigger and bigger and the layers are going up and up and up, that then it becomes more scary, because that fight or flight keeps kicking in and it's creating that feeling, because the anxious thinking about it is creating the anxious feeling. So it's not really anything to do with the place. It's to do with the fact that you're thinking about going to that place. It's probably your thinking around the discomfort and the uncertainty and the not knowing that then makes that uncomfortable for you. But when actually, if you just let that feeling pass, then, you know, it will pass much quicker. As I'm assuming you're not going to places that you know rationally are unsafe. It's just that you don't know where they are and you haven't been before. So again, you know, it's interesting that, you know, a lot of fears and phobias that we have probably have just began from a very normal, natural level of discomfort, and then we've piled layers and layers of thinking on top to the point it's become habitual, that when we do it, we then get nervous about it. I'm trying to think actually about any situations where I've done that with anxiety. I hear it quite a lot with young people actually, who maybe have an experience where they pass out at school because it's really hot in the school hall or in a church, and then they become scared every time they go in the school hall for assembly, which is really difficult or become anxious, because they need to spend a lot of time in that school hall. And just because it sounds awful, doesn't it? But just because they fainted that once doesn't mean that's going to happen every single time. In fact, they probably catch it sooner and realise as they needed some air, or, you know, I've just been sat in my daughter's school hall just now about a meeting about a school trip they've got, and it was just unbearable. But again, they then think it's about the hall, because this is the idea that everything's outside in. And it isn't, it's inside out, and that's what we teach with the principles, and that's why fears and phobias become easier to deal with and, you know, eventually disappear with the 3 principles for that reason, because you start to realise it's inside out. So places you haven't been before can't make you anxious. Heights can't make you anxious. You know, people in characters can't make you anxious. The only thing that makes you anxious in those situations is your perception or your thinking about the situation. It's completely and utterly the thoughts that are creating those feelings. So none of those things can make you anxious. So the fact that you then attach to that, well, I'm scared of heights, or I'm scared of driving to places I've never been, or I'm scared, it's like you're saying that that's because of that thing. And it's not. It's actually, I am scared, have a fear of heights. Really what you mean is, I have a lot of anxious thinking about heights, or I have a lot of anxious thinking about places I haven't been before, or I have a lot of anxious thinking about people dressed up in characters. Because there is a difference. You know, those things are not responsible for that fear or that phobia. Your thoughts about it are. So we got any other phobias in the house? Surprised no one said flying, actually. I'll put mine in. Flying. But yeah, it's kind of, you know, as I say, my fear of flying just doesn't, it's just not the same. Just doesn't. I mean, I'm not completely comfortable. Don't get me wrong. And I think someone that's maybe got a fear of heights, even if you then started to realise it was through thought and became a lot less anxious thinking about it, you still might feel that slight level of discomfort, but it wouldn't stop you from going up and seeing somewhere. You might go up to the top of the Eiffel Tower and feel slightly woozy and a bit uncomfortable, but that's very different to going, I can't do that. You know, they're very different, aren't they? So unless anyone's got any questions, then I will leave you to it. Just give it another few seconds. It's still so sunny here. I've got red face, but it's just so warm still outside. It's actually, dare I say it, a bit too hot today. Okay, so I'm going to love you and leave you, and I will catch up with you next week. I'll also write blogs and things in the meantime, hopefully, when I get a chance. But I'll come back live on Monday next week. Okay, take care. Bye.